Khalid Rasheed, today's magazines for the city of Houston, for the culture. For the H magazine, man.
This is Khalid Rasheed of 4H Magazine. I want to shout out to our sponsor, Wildlife Magazine, Little Ryan. Today I'm joined by a special guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell the people who you are.
My name is Toni Hickman, and I am a lot of things. But yeah, I'm a music artist. I'm an author. I'm a holistic health practitioner. I am a survivor of 2 brain aneurysms and a stroke. A mother, an activist, and ongoing with my titles. Award winner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So break down. Let's start from the beginning. You said from the music career. What was the inspiration behind it? You know, some people, most singers, inspiration come from singing in the church or anything like that. But now in the genre of hip hop, you know what I'm saying? What was your inspiration that made you want to get into that?
Honestly, mine also started in the church
Okay.
because I used to, I still sing too.
Yeah.
And so it started, but I used to always write poetry.
Okay.
And when I was in middle school, this guy, he was like my best friend's cousin.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm going to write a rap for y'all. I'm going to write a rap for y'all. And he wrote the rap, and we were in a talent show at the school, and we won first place.
Okay.
And I was like, I could do this. Like, I could write. I don't need him to write, you know?
Yeah.
And I just took it from there. And, like, he helped me find my passion.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. 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 So now you come from that '90s era, when music had substance. Far as women and lyrics, you know what I'm saying? It kind of went to hand in hand. You know, they might express, about talking about body and stuff like that, but they had metaphors and punchlines. It was more, people took their craft more seriously.
Yeah.
No, so being that you seen the music scene change, what do you think about that as a female lyricist?
Um, I look at it in 2 ways, and I tell you, like, it's a form of ignorance. I think it's a form of ignorance, but in my Suave House days, even though we did talk about like life and philosophical subjects,
Yeah.
I still was in that mind state. I still said some of the stuff that these girls say. So
Okay.
I can't really be mad at them because they're at the age that I was when I was saying the same thing. And wisdom comes with growth, you know,
Okay.
and sometimes you can't just jump into growth like that. You have to just go through the process of understanding what you're putting out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, so tell the people, because a lot of people don't know, what I'm saying, for us about your career span and stuff like that. So how did the opportunity come to be a part of Swab House?
Okay, so like I said, I started in New Orleans. I was actually signed to a group, Full Pack, in New Orleans, and like we were really getting paid. And then a lot of stuff happened with that, and they kind of fell off.
Okay.
And so I was kind of like this solo artist, and I ran into another rapper in New Orleans, and she was in a group.
Okay.
I was solo, but she was in a group. And so I was like, man, I'm about to go to New York, you know. And that was my thing. I was like, I'm just about to go to New York. I got it. New Orleans is not the answer.
Okay.
And she was like, I want to go too.
Yeah.
And it was just that simple. Like, we barely knew each other when we did that.
Okay.
And, but we went, and my mom had convinced my aunt to let us stay with her.
Okay.
And so we stayed there, and at the time, the young lady, her name was Redbone, but she had a cousin out there that was signed to Motown.
Okay.
And so the first thing was back then you had these demo packages,
Yeah.
and you had to get all that together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so we had all of that together, and we was about to go to Motown with it. We was going to everybody, but we was getting blocked in some ways because we was these Southern girls in New York. Like, we got the big stacks. We looking weird as hell. Like, you know what I'm saying? And then I'm like 6'1", and she maybe 5 feet 4'11". So we like complete opposites.
Yeah.
And so, but we was dope, you know. And so she tried to get us in Motown, and then I think Andre Harrell wanted us. And then at one point we had got into Jive. So Jive actually gave us a demo deal. Well, they started the process of giving us a demo deal. They didn't put any money in our pocket, but they paid for us to work with producers. And one of those producers was supposed to be T Mix from Suave House. And so then the thing came, because by then, like, she ended up staying with her cousin, and I was staying in a place called the Covenant House. It's a shelter in New York.
Okay.
And so we went there. No, we went to Jive, back to Jive, and by that time, the Ghetto Twins had came to Jive, and so they like, man, they more marketable than y'all. Like, we can't even fit y'all in pictures because y'all, you know, the height difference. You know what I'm saying? And so we was just like, wow, you know. And so she left New York and went back to New Orleans.
Okay.
And I stayed in New York. And I went back to New Orleans to visit my mom. And when I went back, it's crazy. I went back, and the second day I was there, G. Wallace, who used to work with Suave House, called my mom's phone. I don't even remember how he got her number because I didn't have a cell phone, but I don't know how he got her number. And called and was like, well, what happened with Jive? Like, what happened? What y'all do? Blah, blah, blah. And long story short, they put Draper on the phone. And me and her had kind of like, we was just kind of going, we didn't know what was next, so we was going our separate ways. But he was like, he said, you know, call her on three-way. I want to hear y'all rap. And I was like, all right.
Yeah.
And I called her on three-way, and like the next couple of days, they flew us out to Houston, and that was a wrap.
That was it, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I want people to take from this story is that, you know, you kind of had to go through some things in order to, some trials and tribulations for a blessing to come through. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Now, you got to remember, these things happened before cell phones existed.
Right.
So if somebody tracked you down, they really was looking for you and trying to, do some business with you and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So that's a good thing, though. Okay, so you said, let's get into the author thing, because we have a book up here by you and stuff like that. So what is your inspiration for as being an author? You know, some people, I think, some people inspiration might be life experiences. Some people this might be, just want to address issues, because I know in our culture, you know what I'm saying, our stories need to be told by people like us. So what is your inspiration?
And even though that story is not, that book is not about my story, but I've always been a writer and a philosopher. Like, I always had, even when I was young, I would have these deeper thoughts about life that, like, the average person probably wasn't having. I was concerned about how time worked and, things like that, and I would write about it. And so writing is definitely just one of those things I like to do, just to express and release.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but this book right here was born because, after I had my second brain aneurysm, I had, and went through everything I became a certified naturopath. And so, even before that, my mother was a healer in the church. I was raised Seventh-day Adventist, so in Seventh-day Adventist, you can't eat meat. You go to church on Saturdays, like sunset to sunset, you fast. So that was like a ritual in our house for a little while,
Okay.
you know. And so, yeah. But so I knew about the herbs, and like I said, my mother everybody knew to go to my mother when it was time to, like, if you were sick or whatever, they would go to my mother. So she had me reading books like Back to Eden and different things like when I was young, you know. So it was embedded, but I went and got certified just so I would know more. And I'm still learning. Like, you know, the journey always, I don't think you ever stop learning.
That's true. That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, knowledge is power and things like that, though. So, far as eating, because I know a lot of people with this different things about, this vegan movement, or, people don't eat certain things like that, though. Do you think that's important? Because I know in our culture we eat a lot of foods, you know what I'm saying? Like, everything from the rooter to the tutor, from the pork, drinking and drugging and all that, you know what I'm saying? And then wonder why they be like, well, what happened to him? He ended up in the hospital and he just went that way. So do you think that's important that, you are what you eat, that phrase is?
Oh, it's mandatory that we digest that phrase.
Yeah.
And, I've learned it in my own personal life and watching it in other people that I know, even relatives. You can't consume constantly dead and expect to be alive.
Yeah.
Like, that's the reality.
Yeah.
You know, in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, they did an experiment one time. It was gross. I was a child, so it kind of scarred me. But they brought out meat. They brought out meat that was just drained of blood. And it looked like our skin, because it was just like wiggly meat. And they were just showing, this is what you're putting in your body. You're putting in a carcass. You're eating dead food, no matter how it looks when you pick it up out of the grocery store. All of the pinkness and all of that, that's chemicals. That has nothing to do with the natural color of the meat. The natural color of the meat is brown and dead. So they're just psyching the eyesight so you can pick it up and purchase it. And not to say I haven't eaten it. I've eaten everything from pork chops, deer, frog legs, all of that.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, when I went, because I was raised vegetarian, my mother, but I've been on my own since I was 15. So, through all of that, I have eaten crap. But wisdom comes even deeper to me when you start ingesting foods from nature, because it's the program that goes with our body versus eating the animals and killing them. We're eating their pain, their sorrow, their grief, their madness, and then we wonder why we're enraged, So.
Okay, I'm glad you gave it that perspective. I never looked at it from that perspective. Now, okay, now I want to go ahead and talk about, I just remember like in '93 when doing the Source Awards, when Andre Three Stacks was saying that the South has something to say. Now I want to get into it, the misconception about what they think about people of the South, especially of New Orleans. That I know with the or this Louisiana period, with the constant flooding and I guess being known for like voodoo, things of that nature, all that type of stuff. And some people go with the slavery and stuff. So what do you think about what the people think about the misconception of, saying where you from?
I wish I knew about the misconception a long time ago, right? Because really the misconception is what we have been brainwashed to believe, not what actually exists.
Okay.
So, if you really want to study it, like voodoo and African spirituality is our original culture.
Okay.
And if you look deeper into understanding Christianity, which most of us have been embedded with and indoctrinated with, if you look deeper into that, they beat us. They killed people in order for them to practice and believe in this one God.
Yeah, of course, yes.
Right?
Yeah, you're right.
So to each his own. You're welcome to believe whatever you believe, and in that process, there are still lessons that you can learn from Christianity. But Christianity teaches a form of fear that makes other people not want to go out of it. And that is the problem.
Yes.
Because if you teach that this is the only Bible you can read, this is the only book you can read, and if you go outside this, then you are damned, you are pagan,
Yes.
you are going to hell. That's fear you are embedded into the people.
Yes.
And to this day, most melanin dominant, black, whatever you want to call us, we're scared to go outside of the box because of that embedded fear that has been put in us.
Yes, I definitely agree. With that, I tell people, if they look at the movie Roots, it's a prime example when we got here that we was all not practicing that religion. You see what I'm saying? When they came and got us, and it was a form of Christianity back then, but not what we practice now. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
So, I just tell people they do need to go ahead and get knowledge and stuff like that, and to go back and forth because it's not up for debate. You know what I'm saying? If you're willing to study, you're willing to study.
Right.
Okay, so let's get into you said the brain aneurysm, things like that though. Now, so when things like these happen, I don't know what was your first thought, or how did you know when you went to the hospital and found out, or did something just you were just walking one day and just something just happened? So how did these things come about?
So the first one happened like 3 years before the second one. And I was in Atlanta. I was independent, and I had actually just got off the phone with Suge Knight probably like 2 days ago. And he wanted to fly me to California because he heard a song I did with Petey Pablo and was just like, this is dope. Like, I want to, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, so one side of me is like, dang, Suge Knight gangster than a mug, though. Like,
Yeah.
And the other side, like, dang, I'm on the phone with Suge Knight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're a legend still.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, so the first one, I was at my mom's house. And my mom said I kept on looking like something was wrong with me. Like, I just kept on looking around. And I remember it, but I don't. And she asked me, did I want to go to the hospital? And I said yes. And they rushed me to the hospital. And what's crazy is, it's because our communities are funny. It's hard to get in hospitals sometimes. And so they had to take me to 3 hospitals before I landed in the right hospital that had a bed. Everybody turned me away. So if at any point I was about to die in the ambulance, I would have died because they didn't have a bed. They finally brought me to Emory. And Emory, that's the first aneurysm. And Emory did an angiogram where they went through my groin area up to my brain. It's a big debate about this, big debate about Emory, but they were supposed to clamp something in my brain, but they didn't have to shave my head off or anything. And so I was probably out for like 6 months. But after that, I was like back in magazines. I was doing big stuff in Atlanta. Like, I was on that peak, right?
Yeah.
I was on the peak.
Yeah.
And so then, long story short, get back at it. I'm grinding it out. I'm doing all of this stuff. And I finally finished up another project. I had worked with some big artists, and I was just like, oh, this is it. And I went to New Orleans to celebrate. And so my ex, who I was with at the time, his mother made me some vegetarian rice. And so I thought I had food poisoning because I ate the rice and all of a sudden I was feeling sick. And that was one of my symptoms with the first brain aneurysm is nausea and vomiting. But I'm like, there's no way I'm having another brain aneurysm. Like, who does that? You know what I'm saying? And but that one actually burst in my head. That one burst. And so I fell out at my boyfriend's sister's house. And I fell out. And they rushed me to the hospital. And my mother was in Atlanta at the time because she had moved from New Orleans to Atlanta when I got moved to Atlanta from with Suave House.
Okay.
And so, yeah, she was in Atlanta, so she had to come to New Orleans, and she had to give them permission to operate on me. I don't know how. I don't know if she had to give them permission or she told them to wait. But one way or the other, they didn't operate until my mother got there. And they shaved all my hair off and did surgery. Now, I've never had high blood pressure in my life, none of that. And so while I was on the operating table and they were in my head, my body went into shock. And I had a stroke on the table. I had a stroke on the table, so they hurried up and came out of my head and stitched me up. And I had staples like all in my head. And my head was completely bald. And so, yeah, that was the process. So it took me a couple of days. I think I was in a coma for a couple of days, and then I came to. And I just remember wanting water so bad, and I couldn't get water. And I had tubes up my nose and tubes down my throat, and I snatched all of it out. I snatched every tube out. That's because this hand was working just fine. And so I was like, this guy, what is this? And I wanted water so bad, but I couldn't move, you know, like my body was just. And so the nurses came in and they're like, oh, no, Miss Toni, you can't be doing all of this and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I want water. And that's what I'm saying. But they're not understanding me, right? They're not understanding me at all. So then they gave me paper and I wrote water, but I wrote the W like a M, and all my words were scrambled. So when you have a stroke, there's something called aphasia. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, aphasia is a situation where the brain gets scrambled a little bit and it's hard to communicate or understand, or even you may want to communicate, but it's not coming out the way you want it to come out. So I was going through that.
Okay.
And so they got on the phone with my mom, and my mom, she told me this story later, but she got on the elevator, and these nurses, one, you know Cheeky Black from New Orleans? She was a big rapper, but she was a nurse at the hospital I was at.
Okay.
And so she on the elevator with two other nurses, and they talking about this stubborn girl in ICU who done pulled all the tubes out her nose and her mouth and blah, blah, blah. And my mama turned around and she said, is her name Toni Hickman? And she was like, yes. And she was like, yeah, that's my daughter, you know. But I think my stubbornness is what saved my life, you know. So, yeah, my stubbornness is why I'm not in a wheelchair. My stubbornness is why I keep going. So I received that, you know. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's a lot. That's a lot to take in and stuff like that. Okay. Now, so you know, when you say you was doing the music, you was back on the rise. So I'm sure when that things happened, I'm sure that how did the industry take that? You know what I'm saying? You know, how did that go? Was it a form of blackball or what?
You know, so we dealing with a couple of things at this point.
Okay.
I got double whammies against me
Okay.
because now I'm 31, 32, something like that, right?
Okay.
They're not looking for that no more.
Yeah.
They're looking for the young girls.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the industry.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I had even my pity parties in the hospital because I'm like, who's going to want a disabled artist? I was in a wheelchair. And I'm talking to my nurse and I'm like, who going to want a disabled artist? Like, you know, I really went through a lot of inner turmoil, you know. And, but yeah, the industry, I didn't even fight for the industry like that no more. I had to figure out what I was fighting for. I didn't know what I was fighting for, but I knew I had this I'll be damned attitude. And I mean, probably 3 months after they released me in New Orleans out of the living rehabilitation place, because they told my mother that I would never speak or walk again and that she should put me in a nursing home. Yeah. And my mom was like, no. My mom said, no, just let her go to rehabilitation. She'll be fine. Just let her, as long as she gets her brain back, she'll be fine. And I was very stubborn. I went through a lot of pain and tears and all of that in there. But when I got out of the rehabilitation place, they sent me back to Atlanta. To another rehabilitation outhouse place. And so I stayed with my mom for like 3 months. 3 months, but the realization I had with my mom is, you're going to keep catering to me, and then I'm not going to do nothing for myself. Now, most people wouldn't think like that. Most people would be like, I need to take this catering and just like get comfortable. I didn't want to get comfortable where I was. I was falling constantly. I was on a cane because I refused to take the wheelchair. And I fell probably 50 times. I didn't care. I was not going out in a wheelchair. That was my determination. But I felt like as long as my mother kept bringing me food, cooking, fixing stuff, asking me what I need, then it was kind of like a hindrance. And I know she meant well. But it wasn't well for me because I needed to grow. I needed to become Toni again, whoever that was, because I was finding myself all over again. Yeah. But yeah, the industry, and like I said, I didn't look for it. I just life kind of led me down a slow but different path.
Okay, now you talked about being a motherhood. Okay, this will be the last question. You talked about being a mother. You know what I'm saying? Motherhood. It's going to that journey because you said you've been out on you was out on your own since 15 and stuff like that though. So to see life that you created, you know what I'm saying, and stuff like that, and then when you was going through what you was going through, how did that affect you?
When I was going through,
the rehabilitation, the aneurysms, all that type of stuff like that. When you was trying to go through, I guess the transition to come out, how did that?
It brought me deeper into myself because, as you can see, like I'm tall. And even though I'm a giant, I used to wear the heels. I modeled part time. Like I did all of that. You know what I mean? So finding myself beyond what I thought was my physical beauty, because of course I couldn't wear heels anymore. I was walking with a limp. My head was completely scarred. I had staples in my head, and so figuring out what the beauty was in me was the process. Like even I remember there was a nurse that asked me while I was crying, and I was like, I'm mad at God, and I could leave this with your viewers because this was a powerful statement for me. And I was like, I'm mad at God. Why me? Why this keep happening to me in my music career? And, I've gotten so far. Why? And she said, Toni, she said, what you need to do is ask why you had 2 brain aneurysms and a stroke and you're still alive. And that question is what empowers me now. I'm still working on living my purpose versus just saying words for a buck.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ever since this happened, I live my life to help be a light.
I totally agree. Okay, then, you know what I'm saying? We're going to have to wrap this on up. I guess we went a little bit over the time, though. So I want to say shout out to our sponsor, Wildlife Magazine, Little Ryan. I appreciate you for this book, this gem that you dropped off. I want all the people to take from this that, never give on up. You continue to go through something, but, it's always a greater plan on the other side of the road. This is Khalid Rasheed. This is 4H Magazine, and we signing off. Thank you.